The drenching rainfall from the remnants of Tropical Storm Lee has mostly come to an end, but there are still problems to deal with. Several roads in our area are flooded, and several schools in the region are closed or delayed again today. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett is warning of a possible public health emergency because sewage treatment plants have been overrun by storm waters. The good news is rivers in our area have crested. We'll start our team coverage in Berks County, where folks are coping with floodwaters from the Schuylkill River. The water has not only affected roads, but also sewage systems. Meteorologist Mark Shanaberger joins us live from Union Township. Good afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, Jaciel, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we're here in Union Township, and this is 724, usually a passable roadway, a pretty commonly used roadway in this area. But you can see it is flooded out, and this is not the only location of 724 that is flooded out. Now, you can get across the roadway if you stay up high, and we have seen a couple of the higher trucks make their way through here on this side of the roadway. But it doesn't take long before you get into some deeper water, and obviously a car would not be able to make it through, especially a regular car would not be able to make it through part of this roadway. Now, if I keep on going all the way over there, you get about waist deep. So it's just a good idea if you come to a section of roadway like this, not to try to pass through it, because it is pretty deep when you go on one side of the roadway. And you probably don't realize it if you travel a roadway like this every day, the difference in elevation just from one side to the other. So please take your time as you're traveling around the area today, especially in this part of Berks County. Union Township was really hit hard by some of the rainfall that we've seen the past couple of days. So you want to keep an eye out for roadways like this as you were traveling around the viewing area. But there is some good news here in Union Township. We have seen the water levels recede since we got here earlier today. They were about, I would say, 100 to 150 feet further from where I'm standing right now. Now those water levels have receded a little bit, and they continue to recede at this hour, so that is some good news. We also have some breaking news. I saw something very bright in the sky. I think it's the sun. I'm not positively sure on that, but seeing it sure made me feel good. Live from Union Township in Berks County, I'm WFMZ meteorologist Mark Shanaberger, back inside you guys.
I'm glad you feel good after slugging through all that water, Mark. Thank you. Folks who live along the Delaware River have had their eyes on the forecast and the water levels for the past couple of days. WFMZ's Jaccii Farris is live in Easton with more on the situation there. Jaccii.
Well, Jaciel, I can tell you that we are on Bushkill Drive, and this has got to be the worst damage that we've seen so far. Let's go ahead and take a look. You're looking at the backyard of about 8 homes in a row on Bushkill Drive. The water, if you can see on the building there, you can see the water has gone down about 2.5 feet. But the entire basement of all of these homes, they're filled with water. And everything had to be moved out. People say that they're so frustrated because this is the second time they've had to do this. And this was actually, according to the residents, worse than what they saw for Irene. They say this was about 4 feet higher. The gentleman that lives on the end, he's lived here for about 30 years. He says he's been through 10 hurricanes, 10 floods rather, in those 30 years. And he says that he thinks that with 2 of them this year, that it's time to move. Now, if you look in the water, I mean, this is just a prime example of why you should never go into flood water. There is a lot of oil, there is a lot of debris, and a lot of things just floating around that you do not want to come in contact with. So if you're going down a road where you see water lying around on the roadway, turn around, because you never know what's in the water, and you certainly don't know what's underneath the water. Now, we also saw some minor flooding over in Regalsville, New Jersey, where one road was washed out because it was so close to the Delaware. But basically, like I said, this is the worst flooding we've seen today. In Easton, Jaccii Farris, 69 News.
It's pretty bad. Thank you, Jaccii. And now let's take a look at what may be in store for the rest of the day. WFMZ meteorologist Matt Broderick is in the Weather Center with a preview of the forecast. Matt.
All right, Jaciel, thanks very much. Well, the good news is all of the rivers have crested. We are still dealing with some rivers and creeks that are above flood stage, and certainly we continue to see minor and even moderate flooding that is occurring. Now, along the Delaware, every location has crested, and this goes up from Tox Island all the way down the line. So it's mostly every location crested. Now, you can see the current levels. Belvedere was never an issue. Easton, 28.02, so still 6 feet above flood stage, moderate flooding there. Regalsville, right near where Jaccii was, 27.39. That is the current level. So again, that's crested, but 5+ feet above normal. Trenton continues at 22.12. Trenton's been very, very steady there the last few hours, so some minor flooding occurring there. Now, along the Schuylkill River, the only place not to crest is Philly, and we expect it to crest below flood stage. So that's good news. You can see now in Reading, we are back below flood stage. That is very good news there. Pottstown is continuing to be the big-time issue with 17.75. It is going to be a very slow climb down for Pottstown along the Schuylkill River. We do not expect that to get below flood stage until later tomorrow. So it is going to take a while, and that moderate flooding will continue right through tonight and into Saturday. Full details on other creeks and rivers with problems, your full weekend forecast, all of it coming up in just a few more minutes. For now, Jaciel, we'll send things back over to you.
All right, Matt, thank you. We'll see you in a bit. Stay with 69 News for continuing coverage of the flooding. We'll have more on this in our evening newscasts. There is also a complete list of school closings, delays, and other cancellations available on our website at WFMZ.com. And you can stay up to date on the water levels by tuning into the 69 News AccuWeather channel. Emergency crews in Warren County are allowing people back into their homes today after a mudslide, but only briefly. 50 people in Liberty Township were evacuated after the slide destroyed one home and damaged another yesterday. It happened in the area of Lewis Lane and Lakeside Drive. Officials say some residents are being permitted to retrieve medication. They say a geologist is coming to the area to evaluate the situation and that residents may be able to get back in their homes tonight. The owner of the home that was destroyed says he will never live on the mountain again.
I certainly would not rebuild there, and I think anybody that lives along here, has their house on these banks like this, on this mountain, ought to think real seriously about what just happened.
Officials say the home that was damaged is, quote, hanging on by a thread.
5:30.
President Obama has declared a disaster emergency for more than 40 counties in Pennsylvania.
The declaration includes Berks County and all of its surrounding counties. It will allow for federal aid to help the counties hit hardest by the rain and flood damage. Several roads in Berks are still covered with water and closed today. Early this morning, we found parts of Route 183 that were still impassable. Rain from earlier this week mixed with remnants of Tropical Storm Lee dumped between 5 and 9 inches of water on parts of the state.
Officials in Reading's Public Works Department say all that rain may have caused another sewer main break.
They say a 42-inch force main has ruptured again, and crews are pumping sewage into the Schuylkill River until repairs can be made.
And yes, this is the same problem pipe that broke 2 weeks ago, resulting then in millions of gallons of sewage being pumped into the river. It took crews about 35 hours to fix that break. Crews are hoping to start making repairs on it tonight, but they say the ground may be too wet and soft. The river's flooded downstream, and it's a source of drinking water for Pottstown and Philadelphia. In Western Berks, some folks are also dealing with sewage problems.
The submerged sewage treatment plants caused sewage to back up into some homes in the Wilmersdorf and Wernerville areas. WFMZ's Dwayne Parker is in our Berks studio with more on that story for us. Dwayne.
Good evening, Robin. Wendy, roughly 60 homes have been damaged, all due to this week's heavy rains.
I had about 6 feet of water with
4 feet of raw sewage.
And it all came within a 2-hour period.
On Gall Street in Wernersville, homeowners had a dirty situation on their hands.
Items that were going down through the sanitary now have come back up either through the pipe or the toilet back into the basement.
Barry Schaefer is a movie collector and says 2,000 of his DVDs are gone, along with thousands of dollars in furniture.
Everything of significant value is downstairs and it's ruined.
Gary Bahotnik says he hasn't even started to estimate the cost of the damage.
That's the last thing I'm thinking about.
Sure.
I'm just trying to think about how I'm going to clean this mess up.
Robisonia and Wernersville authorities confirmed that Thursday the sewage water plant went underwater.
It was an abundance of water that the system could handle. Maybe once every 50 years you have something of this nature, and your systems can't handle it.
Firefighters from the Western Berks Fire Company spent the night pumping water out of basements. The mayor says he has contacted local politicians and will arrange for dumpsters to be sent to the area to help with cleanup. Meanwhile, residents say now is the time to come together.
We help each other out because there's going to be a lot of work to do. And I'm not in the best of shape. I'm going to need a lot of help.
Now, coming up tonight, we'll have more on this story and tell you what the mayor is doing to try to get relief for these families. Wendy.
Thank you, Dwayne. Well, the Wernerville State Hospital remains empty tonight. It was evacuated yesterday when a dam broke and water started to flood the hospital. Staffers transferred 191 patients to Norristown State Hospital in Montgomery County, 74 patients to South Mountain Restoration Center in Franklin County. Medical records also had to be moved. The State Department of Welfare says engineers assessed the damage earlier today. No word on when patients will return to Berks County. Well, the Schuylkill River has been receding all day, and that is bad news for the fish that we found swimming at Front and Franklin Streets in Reading. Schuylkill crested in the city last night about 5 feet above flood stage. That level should make for the third highest crest in Reading on record, behind the flood of 2006 and the flooding caused by the remnants of Hurricane Agnes back in 1972. At Blue Marsh Lake, officials say they're seeing historic water levels. Spillway is releasing water, and the lake is off limits to the public.
Well, speaking of Blue Marsh Lake, in Union Township, some neighbors are blaming Blue Marsh for not releasing enough water. Police living along 724 were cleaning up quite a mess today. WFMZ's Melissa Fullerton has that.
We're lucky.
This is what Rodney Wagner considers good fortune. A basement full of water, still better than what it could have been.
The first floor didn't get touched like it did in 06. 06 we had about 2 foot of water.
This is where the water level was in 06.
Lots of folks along Route 724 were drawing comparisons to the floods of a few years back.
In 06, I had about 26 inches of water in the bottom of the house. In this storm, I got 1 inch in the bottom of the house.
Still enough to soak the carpet and move things to higher ground. Some here blamed engineers at Blue Marsh Lake for waiting too long to release water and stave off some of the flooding.
They didn't do anything until after the fact, and here we all are underwater again.
Officials at Blue Marsh say they started releasing water last Thursday, but received more rain than expected. Water levels at the lake reached record highs overnight, even higher than in 2006.
You're at their mercy, you know, so what are you going to do?
Back in Union Township, some roads were also underwater. Brazen drivers were not only taking a risk, but setting a bad example.
I just think it's cool to see people go through it sometimes.
In Union Township, Melissa Fullerton, 69 News.
A popular amusement park has once again been hit hard by flooding. These pictures show the damage at Knoebels in Northumberland County. The park says the floodwaters are starting to recede, but as you can probably guess from these pictures, there is a lot of cleanup work to be done. Knoebels will not be open this weekend. The low-lying park has survived several floods in the past. A 39-mile stretch of the Pennsylvania Turnpike is open again between Reading and Harrisburg East interchanges. These drivers were detoured around that part of the highway last night because of flooding from the Swatara Creek in Dauphin County.
That's it.
Crews are still cleaning up after a major mudslide in Liberty Township, Warren County, New Jersey. The ground gave way, destroying one home and damaging another one.
And people there still aren't sure if more of the mountain is going to give way. WFMZ's Will Lewis is joining us live now in the studio with more. Will.
Well, Wendy and Rob, with all the rainfall this last week, the ground is completely saturated. Workers are also monitoring a crack that opened up on Lewis Lane just after a home was totally destroyed. There is so much water coming off the mountain in Liberty Lake in Warren County, New Jersey, that it's draining out of the walls of some homes.
It has compromised the roadway up top, and which compromised the houses also, which made the whole thing happen.
Mayor John Insko is referring to the mudslide that destroyed a home, damaged another, and left 50 people without a place to live for now. Most of the mud stopped right at Mountain Lake Beach, thanks to an abandoned building by the lake.
We're going to have to sift through the debris and pull out the stuff that's not dirt, and we're going to haul it to maybe the landfill site.
Crews will also be watching a crack in Lewis Lane. Right now, only certain vehicles are being allowed on the roadway to keep the weight off the macadam. Geologists are still surveying the area, but when asked on a scale of 1 to 10 about the probability of more ground crashing down,
judging from what I'm seeing up there, I think we're going to be right around a 10. It's not going to be pretty if that opens up. We could lose another house or two.
So far, there is no word when people can return to their homes. The Mountain Hill Fire Department is escorting people in to get medication and a few items during the daylight hours. Rob and Wendy.
Okay, thanks, Will. Flooding fears had a lot of people clearing out basements and moving to higher ground.
A lot of areas were spared, but the folks along the Bushkill Creek in Easton weren't so lucky. WFMZ's Jaccii Farris has the story.
For Easton resident Cliff Wiesner, today is a case of deja vu.
Last week with Irene, we just went through 26, which was like maybe 4 steps less.
Wiesner is busy cleaning up after this latest round of flooding, but he can't do much because the water that stands in his backyard is also standing in his basement. What are you going to do now?
Nothing, put it back together, clean it up, and see what insurance company does.
Wiesner says in 30 years he's been through 10 floods, 2 of which were this year. He says he thinks it's time to move.
But I think finally now I have about had enough of this stuff. I'm going to locate the higher ground.
A couple of streets over, Larry Holmes Drive was also underwater. A police officer was posted to keep people from going around the barricades. Mayor Sal Panto says already a handful of people have been cited for ignoring the closure.
We have a zero tolerance policy for anyone that goes around. It puts our first responders in harm's way.
The flooding from the Lehigh River forced the closure of 611 between Easton and Riegelsville and caused a lot of folks to stop and stare.
I was like, wow, I got to go get some pictures of that.
Over in Riegelsville, New Jersey, the flooding wasn't as extreme, but did cause the closure of River Road. Residents here say they're used to it, but like everyone else, they're hoping the water will recede from their community quickly. Jaccii Farris, 69 News.
Easton's Bushkill Street Bridge has now been reopened, but Larry Holmes Drive is still closed from 3rd to Northampton Streets. The city has canceled tonight's movies in the park at Nevin Park, but they're still hoping to hold Sunday's 9/11 ceremony at 4 p.m. in Scott Park. Center Square is the backup location for that. The Lehigh Valley Health Network Marathon for VIA on Sunday will now take a different route through Easton, along with Allentown, because of flooding. The finish line in Easton remains the same. In Carbon County, high water forced officials to close Beltsville Lake to boaters until further notice. After the heavy rain, some homeowners in western Berks County are dealing with more than just water. Officials say about 60 homes in Wernerville and Wilmelsdorf have been damaged by sewage that flooded basements. They say that because of rain, the sewage treatment plant couldn't hold excess water, and sewage began to back up into homes.
The cap for the drainage system propelled across the room, and it came up at such a high rate that I believe it was within 2 hours most of us had 3 or 5 feet of water.
Coming up tonight on the Berks Edition at 10:30, we'll have much more on the efforts to help those homeowners.
On the opposite end of Berks County, folks in Union Township are dealing with unwelcome water in their homes. Neighbors along Route 724 near the Schuylkill River prepared for the worst. They moved furniture and belongings to higher ground. Most people there say even though their basements were flooded, it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
In 06, I was full basement and 2 foot to the whole floor. And now this time, the water came up to the house, but I only had like maybe 5 inches of water in the basement.
Neighbors spent the day pumping out their basements. Some roads in this neighborhood also remained underwater throughout the day.
Now let's see what the forecast is looking like for people who are cleaning up after
Eastern Pennsylvania.
That's the Wilkes-Barre area. There, the Susquehanna River crested just a few feet below the levees in Wilkes-Barre. Still up and down the Susquehanna, communities that aren't protected by levees have lots of cleaning up to do. They have been inundated with water and mud and debris. Governor Tom Corbett toured the region this afternoon. Earlier today, President Obama declared a state of emergency for Eastern Pennsylvania.